Hey there, listener. Corey Andrew Powell here, and I'm excited to share that Motivational Mondays is now sponsored by BetterHelp. Feeling stressed or anxious? Well, BetterHelp brings you online therapy that's convenient and affordable. NSLS members get 50% off your first month of BetterHelp when you sign up at betterhelp.com/NSLS or click the link in the show notes. Start your journey to better mental health today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a special edition of the Motivational Mondays podcast, recorded live at our NSLS National Induction Ceremony. We are thrilled to present an inspiring and insightful Q&A with none other than Jawn Murray, the executive producer of The Sherri Show. Now, as we celebrate Black History Month, we honor trailblazers who are breaking barriers and making history. And while Jawn Murray is not the first Black executive producer of a daytime talk show, his impact on media and representation is undeniable. He's an acclaimed producer and daytime Emmy nominee who's garnered an NAACP Image Award for Outstanding Talk Show and 2 Telly Awards for his exceptional work on The Sherri Show. He's also created content for Travel Channel and NFL Network and Epix, and he's also made his mark as a contributor to ABC News with segments on GMA3's What You Need to Know. Jawn has been dubbed the pop culture expert by CNN's Brooke Baldwin, and he's been a prominent figure in entertainment news for many years. So we're so excited to have him here sharing his insights with us, and we hope you enjoy this special episode. Jawn Murray, hey.
Good evening, Corey. How you doing?
I am well, sir. Thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled to have you. And I know you had a busy day because you're pretty much coming right from the Sherri Show to join us. So we appreciate that.
My pleasure, man. Listen, most people know that we're on during the day, but it's a busy time at the show during the holiday season. So it was a long day today.
Well, we are so happy you found some time for us. And before we get started, I want to just let you know on a personal note that for me being in the whole pop culture journalism space, you are one of my heroes. And I looked up to you and Lloyd Boston. When I was in college, I said, I want to do that. And you're one of my inspirations. So thank you for
a little bit of entertainment with me and a little bit of fashion with Lloyd.
I try. And you see, I try to be the culmination of both. So.
And Lloyd's a great guy, a really great guy. So we haven't spent a lot of time together, but every time I run into him, we have really good moments. So.
Oh, wonderful. Well, then look, I say I learn from the best. So we have a lot of questions to answer or to ask you today, I should say. And I want to remind our inductees, of course, to send messages on social media if they want to share or tag a question to us. We can get that to Jawn as well. But in the meantime, I'll just kick it off. And I would love to start by asking you, what initially inspired you to pursue a career in television production and media?
I always wanted to work in television. I'm from a little small town in Virginia called Warrington. And when I was in middle school, my mom moved me to the big city. And when you're in a small town where everybody knows everybody, you do a lot of dreaming. And so I had an aunt that babysat me. She used to watch repeats of like legacy TV shows, like I Love Lucy and Leave It to Beaver. And even though clearly it was color TV, she loved a good black and white show. And I fell in love with the show I Love Lucy. And one of my favorite iterations of that show is the season that Ricky moves to Hollywood and takes his family to Hollywood with him. And it was something about watching Lucy have these aspirations of breaking into Hollywood that first piqued my interest in the entertainment industry. And so after that, I was a latchkey kid. I'd come home after school once we moved to the big city right outside of Washington, D.C., and I let myself in after school, and daytime television was my babysitter. I've had the pleasure of telling folks like Ricky Lake and Rolanda Watts and Sally Jesse Raphael, and I'm looking forward to telling Montel Williams, y'all were my babysitters. And so I'd watch these talk shows and the Oprah Winfrey shows and these adult topics, and I really fell in love with this medium and had aspirations of wanting to break into the medium and be like a Black Regis Philbin or a Black Tom Bergeron. And television and entertainment were things that I loved. And at the time, a lot of the talk shows would have a lot of the entertainment news experts on, people like Tanya Hart and Flo Anthony. And I love to hear these incredibly attractive Black women tell these stories about gallivanting through New York City or Hollywood and mixing and mingling with all the bold-faced names. And So all of that was the foundation that piqued my interest in wanting to be into this business. And once I decided as a young teenager that I wanted to work in entertainment, there was really no stopping me. It was either going to be this or I was going to go to culinary school. So entertainment won over, and it's been full steam ahead ever since.
Wow. There's so much there that I relate to as well. And I think so many people do, because TV is that thing that we are also connected to in our homes, and it can really impact you. But what's really important about what you just said too was the representation component. You saw people who looked like you doing a job that you thought was interesting. So I think that's why it's important for us to be able to see ourselves reflected out in the world, because it lets us know that we can actually do it too. I mean,
yes, if you can see it, you can dream that you can be it.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, there weren't a lot of Black men in the entertainment news space when I was starting out in the business. I mean, there were definitely ones on television. I loved Montel Williams. I loved Arsenio Hall. And both of them were very different in their approach and what they brought to television. But it was something about entertainment news that was very attractive to me. And at the time, it was female dominated or dominated by white males. And so when I finally, as a 20-year-old, broke into the entertainment news space while still in college, I was a student at Norfolk State University and getting freelance writing assignments. I started an online newsletter. I was making strides in entertainment while on the campus of an HBCU. But I wanted to break into entertainment news in particular because there weren't a lot of people that looked like me doing it. And as I was able to make some great strides, have some great success, and make a name for myself outside of New York City and LA. Like I was living between Norfolk, Virginia, and the Washington, D.C. area, and was becoming a national name in entertainment. And so, representation matters, because for me, it motivated me to want to be in that sector of the business because there wasn't a lot of representation. My bigger dreams of being doing television, clearly I was able to see some representation, but I was trying to fill a void when I started out in entertainment news. And it was really a great foundation for me as I was branching out into all the other factors of the business that I ultimately, was exploring over time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, exactly. And I'm glad you stressed that because, again, representation matters. I did not see many faces that look like mine other than yours and Lloyd and maybe Andre Talley sort of in that space where I wanted to be. So, yeah, I agree with you. And I'm so happy that you were there because you inspired others, such as myself. Now, you're the producer of the show, obviously, the Sherri Shepherd Show. And I just, knowing your whole history, obviously, in media, there's a linear path, it would seem. But how did you end up working on this show?
My work with Sherri on the Sherri Show is like my fourth act. So, like I said, I started as an entertainment news writer. That was my journalism was my backup plan. TV was the first goal, but journalism was the one that opened all the doors and created amazing opportunities for me. My second act was syndicated radio. About 4 or 5 years into my journalism career, I was approached by the Tom Joyner Morning Show when I was a mere 24 years old to join that show as an on-air talent. And so I did that for 6 years, while also penning a highly successful entertainment news column for AOL Black Voices for 7 years. And then 2011, I looked up, I was burnt out. I had made more money than anybody in their 20s and 30s could have at that point. I had a rock star media career. I was doing 100,000 frequent flyer miles a year, seeing the world on somebody else's dime, living in 5-star hotels. Even when they were booking my flights coach, I had enough points and equity with the airlines. I was always upgrading, flying first class. It was a really great life, but it wasn't my priority. I wanted to be in television. So I walked away from 2 good jobs in a bad economy. It was the early Obama years, and decided figure out how to make this TV thing work. And I was able to break through in cable news. I became a talking head, an expert, and I was so good on networks like CNN and HLN that's when one day I was on live television and Brooke Baldwin was like, you are the pop culture expert, and the thing stuck. And a lot of other people using that title now, but at the time, Brooke was saying that about me. And so I went on to do a lot of cable news, which ultimately opened doors for me to start doing some daytime talk shows. And I co-hosted The View and did multiple appearances on the Wendy Williams show. And then the company that produces her show, I landed a deal for a pilot that they were developing at the time that ultimately didn't move forward. And I kept landing these network deals for shows that networks either couldn't sell or one of which I didn't want to actually be a part of. And started making strides in television. And during that time, I also was a consulting producer on several award shows and some documentaries. And I started producing and directing some documentaries. And so that was my foray into Act 4, which was something that I did not expect to be a prominent thing for me. I just wanted to be compensated for my expertise on a lot of these projects that I was contributing to as a expert, as a talent, as a voice. And but it all worked together because, it was the fall of 2021. We were just coming out of the pandemic good, and Sherri Shepherd got a call to go in and fill in for Wendy Williams. Mm-hmm. At the time, we were aware of her now public medical diagnosis, but we couldn't talk about it.
Right.
And so we went in for 5 days, and Sherri had me kind of run point on the whole show. We crafted her comedic monologue, or we like to call, at the time we called it her hilarious take on the headlines. Mm-hmm. And we handpicked all the guests and really crafted a show that we thought was light and fun and was the escapism that people needed coming out of the dark times of the pandemic. And it resonated with people, both ratings and social media and financially. Brands and corporations really loved it. And so when ultimately they offered Sherri a deal, she said, "I'm only here because of you. And so I will only do this if you do this with me." And so, we decided to go on this journey together. And here we are, almost at the midway point of season 3, and probably having the best time that we've had out of the 3 seasons so far.
I mean, it's an amazing show. It's tremendous. And it's such a great show that does bring happiness and brightness to the world at a time when there's so much divisiveness. And we're just not having some good days now, these days, all the time. And so a show like this is really wonderful because it's intentionally a show that brings good vibes and good intention. Was that the intention going in, or was it just like, we're going to just see what this
No,
is?
Absolutely. It was about design. Listen, there were a lot of comparisons for us to our only real connection to the former show, the Wendy Williams show, was the fact that we occupied some of her time slots. Mm-hmm. At the time in which she was hosted her last season, she was only on in 69% of the country. Yeah. For various reasons. When we launched the Sherri Show in season 1, we launched in 98% of the country. So we picked up some of her time slots, but really gained more ground. And so we wanted this show to feel and be a reflection of who Sherri is, who is a bright light, mm-hmm. who is a fun-loving comedian, who is a believer. And so we wanted to inspire people and have fun and just really use this show as escapism. Escapism was a word that we constantly utilized. And so, we wanted folks to be able to, no matter what you were doing in your life and whatever was going on in the world, this is the place you could come. And we knew that humor would be the great neutralizer. And we realized that we had been resonating with people. We got a letter from a lady who told us that on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, she goes to dialysis, and that while she's going through the worst part of her life, she schedules her appointments around the airing of our show in her city, so that while she's getting this dialysis, she is distracted by all the joy that she gets from our show. We have an audience member that regularly comes to the show, and she's actually become one of my favorites. And one day at the end of last season, she grabs me and said, "I just want to thank you guys for giving me a place to come to, for me to feel like I have purpose in life." And she shared with me that in 2021, her 40-year-old daughter died from COVID complications, and that it nearly killed her to lose a child to COVID. And she said, at the time I was barely hanging on by a thread. And she said, and some days I'm still only hanging on by a thread. And then she fell in my arms and said, "But you guys give me such a sense of purpose, and I look forward to being here every week." And all my staff saw was, one of our favorites just weeping in my arms, and they came over to make sure that everything was okay. But it's that type of impact that I know that we're having on people, both those in their homes and those who get to come and experience this live, that makes this whole situation worthwhile.
That's amazing. Yes. Thank you for what you do because I have laughed a lot. And also, people don't really know often that Sherri was a stand-up comedian. I would say was. She is. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what I knew her from like first before she started like really booking TV shows. I saw her do her stand-up stuff like years ago. So I think there's so many leadership lessons there that you've just covered. In fact, it's interesting because like someone in the audience has just sent us a question. Lester Brown is asking, what is the most important leadership lessons that you've learned in your career? I'm looking at tenacity. I'm listening to you like you just kept going at it. But what would you say to Lester as far as one of your top leadership lessons in your career thus far?
Well, I mean, at the Sherri Show, I'm in a leadership capacity as one of the 3 executive producers of the show. So, I'm one of the folks that help hire and fire and had to lead a team of 100 plus people. And for me, I'm a rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy. I don't believe in beating around the bush. I don't, let's just have a conversation. Let's be frank. Let's just deal with the thing head on. I don't like to belabor things. I don't like to let things fester. I like to deal with things head on. And I found for me that not being averse to confrontation really helps mitigate issues before they can fester, before they can become a cancer and really cause a problem amongst the team. Another thing that I'm a stickler about is having good culture at our show. Listen, I consider myself a nice guy. Sherri's an extremely nice lady. And so everything that we do at our show, from the time you come into the building or to the time you leave, it should be a reflection of us. And so we've only surrounded ourselves with executives and leaders and creatives who embody those attributes. If you can't be good to people, then you can't work here. One time, the Duchess, Sarah Ferguson, was a guest on our show. And I always go up to greet our guests in the green rooms before the show because it makes them feel at home and feel welcomed in our studio. And Sarah Ferguson says, she kept calling me Happy John. She says, Happy John, you're so wonderful. Happy John. And then she told me, she says, everybody here is so nice. I've never been to a show where everybody's so nice. And I looked her dead in her eyes and I said, and if they're not nice, they won't be here the next time you come. We just have a low tolerance for that type of energy,
Yeah.
And if you watch the show regularly, those who watch the show or casually watch the show, every now and then you'll hear a celebrity come and sit on the couch and say, I've never been to a show where everybody's this genuinely happy. It's such a well-oiled machine. Everybody really enjoys being here. Clay Aiken from American Idol fame was just on the show last week. And that was one of the compliments he gave us. He was like, I've done a lot of shows, but I've never been to one where everybody was this daggone happy.
That's so important you bring that up because very often, even in business, for example, and social environments, you talk about this, the culture, and that extends to your professional life or your personal life. You are responsible in many ways for sort of cultivating the kind of environment that you want. If you invite chaos in, that's what you're going to get. If you don't tolerate chaos,
you have to be hands-on with it. Like there was a season and a cycle where the BuzzFeed and the LA Times and all these prominent online sites and newspapers were doing these exposés on talk show culture. And it really led to the demise of shows like the Ellen DeGeneres show, because she was known for being telling people to be kind to yourself. But behind the scenes, they say allegedly she wasn't kind and the producers weren't kind. And so she worked to eradicate the perception that was being placed about her in the media, and she got rid of the toxic executives and made a lot of shifts behind the scene. But the idea that there was the possibility that she herself wasn't kind, it really turned off the viewers. And from the time that story broke to the time she premiered for the season following that, she literally lost a million viewers. And so, and that's because people were really troubled by this idea that the personality that we bought into may not be authentic to who we believe she was. And instead of being kind, she's being accused of being mean. Now, again, I've met Ellen. I was at an Usher Grammar party one time and actually danced with her and her wife, Portia. She's very kind to me. And at the time I wasn't on the Sherri Show and she didn't know who I was. She was kind just because. So I don't, that wasn't my experience with her. But just referencing, the type of stories that came out about shows, we've been very intentional. And I regularly tell my team, I don't know what's going on around here, but we're going to fix this, because what I won't be is a BuzzFeed expose.
Yeah, no, I hear you, because they were definitely doing a lot of those stories. And that demise of that talk show culture was why I thought it was interesting when the Sherri show took off, because I was really curious. I said, well, how is she going to be as a host? And it's great that you brought up the authenticity, because we do talk about that in the leadership conversation as well. You cannot lead others, first of all, until you are really leading with the truth of who you are. And in this case, it happens to be, thank goodness, that Sherri is a good person, and that's how she leads. And you are a good person, so that's how you lead.
Authenticity is how you cut through the clutter. People come to me all the time and they say, "Oh my God, I want to be you," and I was like, "Don't be you, be yourself."
Right.
Because there were times when I was trying to describe to executives and managers and agents what I wanted to achieve in this business. And I tell them, I really like to be like the Black Regis Philbin or the Black Tom Bergeron, because I needed a reference point for them that they'd understand some of the trajectory that I was hoping to aim and accomplish in this business.
Right.
But I've always been my own motivation. Like I'm only trying to top myself. I've never looked at any of my colleagues and my peers and been envious or jealous, and I want what they have. I don't know what it takes to get what they have.
Right.
I want what God has for me. I want to align myself with the professional path that best suits me, and I want to challenge myself to be better daily versus trying to be somebody else, following in somebody else's blueprint. We can all be inspired by people, but the path that we carve should be our own.
Yeah. You hear often people say that, I want to be the next this, I want to be the next that. And I'm like, I think I want to be the first Corey Andrew. That's pretty much what I'm going to strive for, not the next XYZ. But I get it as a point of reference. Yeah. That's kind of how I look at it. And it's okay to be inspired by others, absolutely, but definitely try to be your authentic self. And, I have another question too, that someone named Jessica Randolph, she's asking, how does someone get into television? Is it just about knowing someone? But then you also talk about the importance of networking.
Yeah.
So maybe combine those two thoughts into how you answer someone like Jessica for that question.
The answer to Jessica's question is easy. There's not one path to break into this business. TV is the hardest medium to break into. There's so many competing elements to it now. Listen, we used to only have linear television and cable.
Right.
Now we've got all these streaming platforms and digital platforms. And so there's just so many ways for people to establish themselves as an entity and again, be authentic enough to kind of cut through the clutter. So I don't have an easy answer for that, because there's not an easy path to break into TV. And there's also not one way. But what I can tell you is networking is one of the greatest tools you can use, no matter what sector of the business or what career path you're on. Because the truth of the matter is, I've always believed it and I've seen it work. Relationships will take you further than your skills and your gifts ever will. There are talented people sitting at home all across this country. I know people who are dynamic singers and songwriters and musicians, and they will only be known in some local bar or their local church because they never did the work to build the relationships to acclimate themselves to the industry and to foster enough camaraderie with their peers that opportunities presented themselves for them. I can't tell you the number of times that someone I knew or had worked with or just met or made an impression on was in a position where they said, "Oh my God, I have this great opportunity," and Jawn would be a perfect fit for that. That's networking. In this current capacity as executive producer of the Sherri Show, there are so many people that I've met on my journey, whether I interviewed them, where I was privately counseling them, I was walking them through situations in Hollywood. They were calling me for advice, or they had a project that they were trying to get visibility for, and I helped a lot of people. And I never exploited those relationships. I always continue to maintain my rapport with these people, even when I didn't need something or they didn't need something. And so now I've been able to use all of those relationships and call in a lot of favors to circumvent the structure of the system on the Sherri Show. That's networking. And so effective networking can benefit you no matter what career path you're on, no matter what you're trying to do, because it can help you break through spaces and places that sometimes you just can't achieve on your own.
Yep. We also stress that here too. It's one of our biggest things we stress is the importance of networking. And so we really know that that's a big key. So even here within our community of our attendees tonight, we always encourage that they meet each other and talk to each other. And you never know who's going to become someone in your professional network years later when you're in a position to either hire someone or be hired. So those things are definitely really important. And you also attended Norfolk State University.
I
And notice I said Norfolk, not Norfolk, right? You never know how to say it. But I want to just share that my entire family's all from Eastern Shore, Cape Charles, Virginia. So,
cool.
so I know that whole area really well. And I just would, I love the fact that you started someplace. You had bigger dreams outside of your state border, if you will, outside of your four walls. So what advice would you give your 18-year-old self at this age, knowing what you know now versus what you knew then back in Virginia?
I would tell my 18-year-old self, there was a driving down 95, about to hit 64 and go to Norfolk State. Don't apply for those credit cards. It's the worst thing you could do as a college kid. I'm gonna just say that how I feel it is F up your credit. They offer you them credit cards because they know you in school and you broke and you're gonna run them suckers up. It takes you forever to clean up your credit. Now I'm very happy right now because I have an 800 credit score on all the credit bureaus. But if you knew how much work it took me to get to that place, so that'd be my first thing. I also would have challenged my 18-year-old self to become financially literate at a young age. I would have loved when I was rolling in the dough in my 20s and my early 30s, if I was diversifying my money and making my money work for me, it just would have been a better situation. I could choose to work now. I work because I have to, and I enjoy what I do for a living. But I could live like a privileged person and take a year off. And I just want to backpack through Europe, though. Yeah, I would never. That'd be like being on an episode of Survivor for me.
Well, listen, I think that even you probably would end up making that into a TV show. It'd be like Jawn Across America or something.
But can I tell you the best piece of advice I got in general was the legendary comedian George Wallace told me. It was like my first or second year in the Tom Joyner Morning Show. And twice a year, I used to go to Las Vegas for the Dr. Bobby Jones International Gospel Industry Retreat. Bobby Jones of BET fame used to do this really special event twice a year where he would enrich recording artists and entertainers and industry professionals. It was the best event. I miss it so much. But whenever I was in Vegas, as a part of my networking, I would go and have lunch with George Wallace, who had a big residency in Vegas at the time. And one of the first lunches we had, George Wallace said to me, "Young man, they tell you work hard your whole life, save your money, and when you're old, you travel the world." He says, "When your ass is old, you're going to be too tired to travel the world." And he said, "Travel now while you're young." And so he told me, he says, "I know you're working a lot. I know you're going in and do these gigs. I know you're going in to do these interviews." I was doing a lot of corporate hosting at the time because being on the Tom Joyner Morning Show, you become corporate friendly. So you get a lot of MC and moderator work. And so because of George, if I had a gig in Los Angeles, I'd fly in 2 days early and I'd enjoy myself before the gig. If I had a gig in a city I'd never been to before, I'd stay a few days after so that when I was in my next situation or at some dinner party or in a cultural setting where you're sitting at people who are well-traveled and of upper class, and they talk about the museums and the restaurants and the places they've been in these cities, I wasn't one of those people that said, no, I got to a city, I checked in the hotel, I went to the venue, I went back to the hotel, and I got back on the flight and went home. And it is something that was transformative for me. It changes your humanity to travel both domestically and particularly abroad. You start to see people differently. You realize that we're more alike than we are different. And a lot of the things that you can be taught in your little small towns and even in your local neighborhoods in a big city, that the world is more vast and broad than that. And so traveling and making sure that I saw the world was something that was one of the best pieces of advice I ever get. And so every time I'm on a panel, every time I'm in a situation where I can pour that into somebody else, I share that advice in my George Wallace voice.
Wow. Jawn, thank you so much. And I really appreciate that because yes, it's the growth mindset and it's also being aware of your environment and going out in the world, being fearless, and you encompass all those things. And we are so grateful for you being here with us today, sharing that insight and giving us all that knowledge, dropping that Murray knowledge on us. And so we're so happy that you're here. So thank you for being here today with us.
Thank you. And listen, I want to say special kudos to you and the National Society of Leadership and Success. It was a pleasure to join you all tonight. I hope I shared a nugget or two that was impactful and that you know helps you on your trajectory. And you know, engage with me on social and stuff. You know, I try to live a portion of my life out loud. To not just, you know, I'm not one of the people on social media. It's like, look at me, look what I do. But I really want to allow people to have a vicarious experience through me, because I'm a product of hard work and dedication and manifestation. You know, I envisioned myself being in this business. I worked hard to achieve this career, and I'm only here because all of those elements plus preparation allow me to be successful. And so I like to inspire other people by living through my success. And you know, engage with me on social, and hopefully I inspire you. And I love to run into people out, and people tell me all the time, "Oh, I was at this panel on this forum." I want to hear other people's success stories. You know, I want other people to DM me on LinkedIn and be like, "Oh my God, I heard you say something. It shifted me." Like, that type of stuff really inspires me and gives me the motivation to keep doing it, for sure.
Well, thank you so much. And you've inspired me. As I mentioned, I do what I do a lot because of the inspiration you gave me years ago when you were starting out and I was starting out. So thank you, sir. And we appreciate you being here, and we will talk to you soon.
Thank you so much.